Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns have been on a collision course ever since the OTC made his return to WWE. After this week's episode of SmackDown went off the air, Sikoa took a subtle jab at his cousin that many fans might have missed. Solo Sikoa and the Bloodline took on the Street Profits and DIY in an 8-man tag team match in the main event of SmackDown last night. The Bloodline came up victorious after Sikoa managed to pin Montez Ford after a Samoan drop and Samoan spike. The Bloodline celebrated their victory in the ring as the show came to a close. Before the faction could make their way to the back, Sikoa mocked Roman Reigns by loading up his hand, the way Reigns does before hitting his opponents with the Superman punch. The clip can be viewed below. Why did Solo Sikoa assault Roman Reigns on SmackDown? Roman Reigns made his heroic return to WWE at SummerSlam last month. The former undisputed WWE champion was missing in action since WrestleMania XL. At the biggest party of the summer, Reigns came back and decided to cost Solo Sikoa his WWE Championship match against Cody Rhodes. During the original Tribal Chiefs hiatus, Sikoa created his version of the Bloodline. He decided to eject Paul Heyman from the group since he refused to acknowledge Sikoa as his Tribal Chief. The former enforcer laid Heyman out by triple powerbombing him through a table. Roman Reigns returned at the Premium Live event in August with vengeance. Even though Cody Rhodes was the one to end his historic reign, the former Shield member decided to attack Sikoa. On SmackDown, a couple of weeks ago, the Bloodline got together and decimated Reigns. The former U.S. champion hasn't been seen on WWE TV ever since. WWE SmackDown was nearing its conclusion, and tensions were at an all-time high in the locker room. Roman Reigns had been absent for weeks, allowing the cracks in the Bloodline to grow deeper, and questions about the future of the once dominant faction were on everyone's minds. The absence of the Tribal Chief left a vacuum, and many wondered who would rise to fill the void, or worse, would the family finally collapse? Solo Sikoa, the enforcer of the Bloodline and the youngest of the Anoa'i brothers, had been at the center of attention ever since Roman stepped away. His silence spoke volumes, and his body language on the latest episode of SmackDown hinted at more than just family loyalty. It hinted at growing frustration and a possible desire for change. As SmackDown's main event wrapped up, a chaotic tag team match between Solo and Jimmy Uso versus the Judgment Day's Finn Balor and Damian Priest, Solo stood in the ring, breathing heavily. His eyes, however, weren't focused on their opponents. They were scanning the audience, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. Jimmy had just been pinned, leaving Solo alone in the ring as the Judgment Day celebrated their victory. Solo wasn't just disappointed with the match's outcome, he was clearly dissatisfied with the state of the Bloodline itself. A fractured bond. As the camera zoomed in, Solo's face told a story of disillusionment. He had given everything to the Bloodline, acting as Roman's loyal enforcer, carrying out the Tribal Chief's dirty work. But now, with Roman away, Solo's burden was heavier than ever. Jimmy's betrayal, Jay's defection to Raw, and Roman's absence had left Solo isolated, and it was starting to show. His silent demeanor had become darker, more contemplative. When the show went off air, Solo picked up a microphone, something he rarely did, and looked directly into the camera, his eyes narrowing as he spoke for the first time in weeks. His words were few but impactful. "You think I'm just an enforcer, right?" Solo's voice was gravelly, his frustration barely contained. "Roman's out there, doing whatever he does. But here I am, fighting battles for a man who can't even show up." The subtle but sharp critique of Roman Reigns was shocking. The crowd, still buzzing from the match, suddenly went silent. Solo had never openly questioned Roman before, and his words hinted at a brewing resentment. He dropped the microphone after his brief statement and walked out of the ring, leaving Jimmy standing alone, clearly stunned. Behind the scenes, as the cameras went dark, tension lingered backstage. Word of Solo's comments spread quickly, and whispers filled the locker room. Everyone knew that challenging Roman Reigns, even in his absence, was no small thing. But Solo had spent weeks carrying the weight of the crumbling bloodline, and it was clear that he wasn't going to tolerate being overlooked any longer. Paul Heyman, who had been the bloodline's wise man and Roman's chief advisor, was seen pacing nervously backstage. Heyman's allegiance to Roman had never wavered, but even he knew that something was changing. Solo's outburst had the potential to shift the entire dynamic of the faction. Would Solo truly challenge Roman, or was this a one-time display of frustration? Heyman quickly approached Solo after his words, but Solo brushed him off, walking silently down the hallway, his eyes focused straight ahead. Even Paul Heyman, a master manipulator and diplomat, seemed unsure of how to handle the Enforcer's growing unrest. The locker room had mixed reactions to Solo's apparent shot at Roman. Some were shocked, while others saw it as a natural progression of the crumbling bloodline storyline. Several of the top stars, including the Judgment Day and the Brawling Brutes, viewed Solo's frustration as an opportunity. Without Roman's control, Solo could be an ally or a dangerous enemy. Sheamus, in particular, saw Solo as a ticking time bomb. "The guy's been Roman's hitman for months," Sheamus said in a backstage interview. "But you can only be the silent assassin for so long before you want more. Solo's hungry, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's gunning for the top." Other wrestlers, like Rey Mysterio, took a more cautious approach. "Solo's still loyal to his family," Rey commented. "But when family bonds are broken, people start looking out for themselves. If Roman doesn't come back soon, who knows what Solo's next move will be." A turning point, Solo Sikoa's subtle shot at Roman Reigns didn't feel like an accident. It felt like a turning point in the story of the bloodline. Roman's absence has exposed cracks in the foundation, and Solo, who had always been the quiet, loyal enforcer, now seemed poised to make a move for himself. The WWE universe exploded with speculation. Social media was abuzz with fans debating what Solo's next move would be. Was this the beginning of a rebellion within the bloodline? Would Solo dare challenge Roman's leadership when he eventually returned? On Twitter, one fan wrote, "Solo Sikoa just threw shade at Roman on SmackDown. This is going to get wild when the tribal chief returns." Another posted, "Solo's been holding it down for weeks. Roman better watch his back when he comes back. Solo's ready for that spotlight." What's next for Solo Sikoa? The fallout from Solo's statement will undoubtedly play out in the coming weeks. With Roman Reigns still absent and the leadership of the bloodline in question, SmackDown could soon become a battleground for power. Solo's frustration is likely to continue simmering, and whether Roman returns to squash the rebellion or allows Solo to step into a more prominent role remains to be seen. One thing is certain, Solo Sikoa is no longer content to simply be Roman's enforcer. As SmackDown fades to black, the WWE Universe is left wondering if Solo Sikoa is preparing to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight, possibly at Roman Reigns' expense. Fans are eagerly awaiting the next chapter in the Bloodline saga, and Solo Sikoa may have just positioned himself as the wild card that could change everything.